Today I'm going to be talking about how to file Form I-130, and we'll talk about Form I-130A, which is a newish, it's now a couple years old, form that began under the Trump administration. And it's basically the beneficiary, the spouse, the intending immigrants version. And this is part of our I-130 course and our green card course, marriage-based green card adjustment of status course. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. You're seeing my screen right here. And I will walk you through how I do those two forms and how I would do them if I was petitioning for my spouse, going through a marriage-based adjustment of status process. Got it? So right now, as of this date, 2023, that we're filming this, the I-130 petition, when you go to USCIS and you start to download the form, please do not get tempted to file it online, okay? This type of I-130, you need to file it alongside of your I-485, and when you do that, you cannot file this type of case through the online portal at USCIS. You need to do it on the paper version. So I'm going to scroll down here. So I'm going to go down to the forms and I'm going to click Form I-130. It's always a good idea to download the instructions also, so we can do that in case there's a substantive issue that we need to look up inside the instructions. Whenever you're confused about how to answer a question, always refer to the instructions. As with any immigration form, check the box G28 if you're an attorney or if you're working with an attorney. Put their attorney bar number. That's my attorney bar number. I would do that if I am filing this on behalf of a client, right? So do this. Of course, when you do that, you're going to need a signed Form G28 signed by the client and by the attorney, giving the attorney authorization to be the attorney on the case. So you want to be aware of that. You're going to select this box saying a G28 is attached if you're doing this with an attorney. And if you're not doing this with an attorney, well, then keep that blank and just move on to part 1 of the form. So if this is a marriage-based case, you're going to be selecting that you're filing this petition for your spouse. Okay, do this through other categories as well, but for now we're going to talk about spouse. Question 2 here is only if it's a child or parent, biological child, a step-parent relationship, or if it was an adopted relationship, or a child born to parents who were not married to each other at the time of the child's birth. Basically, they weren't married then, but they're married now kind of situation. So that's technically not a stepchild, step-parent, but anyway, nonetheless, sometimes that might happen if the father, or hardly ever the mother, but if the father isn't listed on the child's birth certificate, for example, it might be that. If the beneficiary is your brother or sister, you would say no here, or not applicable. That's not technically the right thing to put there is NA, because you're not even applying. It's not applicable to this type of case. You're not applying for a brother or sister, so you don't have to say whether or not they're related through adoption. Did you gain lawful permanent resident status through adoption? If you're not a lawful permanent resident, then you would say NA. You could just write that in there, or you can leave it blank because you don't need to answer it. Really, you're just marking the box for spouse. So part 2, information about you, the petitioner. If you're the petitioner, then if you have an alien registration number, like if you're an immigrant, and if you've gone through, you have a green card, or you've gone through the process and now you're a U.S. citizen, you will want to include your alien registration number. Are a U.S. citizen from birth, and you don't have an A number, just leave that blank, and then put in your U.S. Social Security number. Now, your full name, you'll put whatever your name is. So for me, as the petitioner, I will put in Otis Carl Landerholm is my full name. Other names used, I don't have any other names used. I'll leave that blank. It says if any, so if you leave it blank, that's fine. Other information, my town of birth, I'll say Mount Vernon, Washington. Date of birth, April 21st, 1983 is my date of birth. I'm male. Put your mailing address, 123 Main Street. If it's not letting you, it was doing this on another version of the form. If there's ever a situation where it doesn't let you type something in that you know it should, see if there's maybe a different browser that you can use, or what you might do is try downloading the form itself. When I download the form and open it with Adobe, it works better for me for some reason. So this is the exact same form on Adobe. Just getting us up to speed here. No other names used. Mount Vernon, Washington. Yep, all of that is right. Apartment, and now I can type it in. 4C. If that's the apartment number, Oakland, California, 94606. Leave all that stuff. Is the current mailing address the same as your physical address? I'll say yes. If it's not, then have the current mailing address. It might be a P.O. box or something like that. Provide your physical address for the last 5 years. Now they really ask for that. You really need to do that. So the first one gets, let's see, if you answered no, provide information on your physical address in 12A through 13B. Okay, so since we answered yes there, we don't need to do that one. So then physical address number 2. Well, imagine wherever it was I lived before then, 456 Main Street. Apartment, and maybe I lived there from, July 1st of 2020 until, May 31st of 2021, and then I've been in this address since then. So you could put that, right? And now that's actually tricky. I want to go back more than 5 years. Otherwise, I would need to add a separate address as an additional address on the case, because that's what it requests. Go back for the last 5 years, whether inside the United States or outside, and you can add additional information if you need it. So right now it's 2023, so I'm going to, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go back to, say, 2017. That way it's more than 5 years of address history is already there. How many times have I been married? Now, I've only been married once, so that makes that simple. So current marital status, well, if you're filing as a marriage-based case, which is what this is all about, then hopefully you're saying married, right? It wouldn't make sense to file a marriage-based case if you're marked single here. And I'm saying I've only been married once, but of course, if I had other marriages in the past, you would say 2 or 3 or however many, and you would need to include evidence of the termination, including the date of the judgment of divorce or annulment or whatever happened, of those prior marriages before entering into the current marriage. All right. So my wife and I got married on July 11th of 2009 was the date. So we've been married for, 14 years now. Is that right? My wife's awesome. She is super cool. Place of our marriage, we were married in Washington State, up where my family is. I'll put Ridgefield, Washington, USA. That's right. Name, her name is now Landerholm Wendy H. Date marriage ended. If currently married, first list your current spouse first. Yeah, so list your current spouse first. So that's what I've done. There is no end date, so you could just leave that blank, or you could write NA there. Spouse 2 is if there was a prior marriage, which I don't have. But if you had one, you would put in spouse number 2 there. If there's a spouse 3, then you would do that on a separate thing. All right. So my father's, it asks for parent 1 information. So I'll just say Dad Landerholm, born, I don't know, I'll make it up, May 5th. 1955, which is not accurate. That's country of birth, USA. Residence, I'll say Vancouver, Washington, which is not accurate also, although that's where I grew up. Country of residence, USA. My mother, I'll say Landerholm Mom, put her actual name and her maiden name, or her middle name, rather. And then I'll say January 1st, 1955 also. Female, country of birth, USA. Village, town of birth, I'll say Portland, Oregon, which is not true. Where was my mom born? Close to Portland. Yeah, right outside of Portland. And then country of residence, USA. Okay. So I would check that I'm a U.S. citizen. If you're a U.S. citizen, I would say I would check it through birth in the U.S., although that might not be true, right? Maybe you naturalized, maybe you derived it through your parents. If you have questions about that, talk to a lawyer. But if you were born in the U.S., then you can check that. That's pretty straightforward. Have you obtained a certificate of naturalization or certificate of citizenship? I would check no. No, I don't have those things. If you were born in the U.S., you don't need one. Your birth certificate works, right? So, and if you answered yes, then you could put the certificate number, and you would only do that if you went through your own immigration process, right? So if you're a permanent resident, complete all this stuff, including place of admission, state of admission. Did you gain your permanent residence through marriage to a U.S. citizen or permanent resident? Yes. Now, if the answer to this question were yes, if you're a green card holder right now that you won it through marriage, and now you're turning around and filing for a different spouse, then that can create a red flag for you. And so just, you would want the help of a lawyer. The whole course that we're putting together is for U.S. citizens to petition for non-citizen spouses. Green card holders have a challenge filing for green card adjustment of status, and that is that their spouses have to be currently in and maintaining lawful visa status in order to adjust here in the U.S. because they're subject to the priority dates. They're not immediate relatives, right? So see my introductory videos to this course if you have questions about that. And if you're seeing this on YouTube or someplace else, then feel free to check the description to get access to our full course if that's what you want. But what I'm filling out here, and for the purpose of this video, we're not talking about relationships with green card holders. We're talking about relationships with U.S. citizens. So some of that is important to know. So now it's asking for employment history. So for the past 5 years, you got to fill out your employment history. Well, my employer is Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, law firm, Oakland, California, where we fight for your American dream. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see here. Suite 310, Oakland, California, 94606. My occupation, founding attorney. But you would want to use your situation, whatever it is. I've been working here since January 1st of 2011. So because that's more than 5 years, I only need to fill in one. But if you have a recent job, or if you're working 2 jobs simultaneously, or whatever it is, you're going to want to fill out a second employer with the dates there, and you're going to want them to go back at least 5 years, okay? And if you don't have 5 years in 2 employers, you're going to want to add a third, add a fourth, and I'll show you where to add that information. So here, biographic information. It's asking biographic information about you, all right? So my ethnicity, I am not Hispanic or Latino. I identify myself as white, all right? I am 6 feet 1 inch tall. Anyway, I do all this information for you. I weigh 175 pounds. My eyes are like brown, I think. What do you think? Yeah? Okay, all right. My hair color, I don't know. Brown, I will say. Information about the beneficiary. Okay, part 4 is where the tides turn, everybody. Now we're talking about the immigrant. We're talking about the beneficiary. We're talking about your spouse, okay? So starting in part 4, here is where you're going to want to put in information about your spouse. Do they have an alien registration number? If so, put it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. If they don't have an alien registration number. Leave it blank because they will get one through this process. All right? So if a person recently arrived, recently has a visa only, they won't have an alien registration number yet. They've never applied for a permanent status in the United States, or unless they sought asylum or temporary protected status or a U visa or something like that. Unless they filed something to USCIS or to the immigration court, which if that's true, talk to a lawyer first, right? But they might not have an A number yet, all right? Now, if your spouse has a social security number, I'm just making up numbers, you would want to put that in. If they don't have a social security number, then see the video about the I-765 so that they can get one through this process, all right? So beneficiary's full name for me, my wife's name is Wendy. And other names used, well, she used to be, she is an immigrant, by the way, born in Taiwan. She's awesome. And so she was born in Taipei, Taiwan. Date of birth, I don't know if I should, here, I'll put false information going forward. I'll say 1979. She is female. Has anyone else ever filed a petition for her? Well, no. Talk to her first. Maybe an uncle had, maybe somebody else had. The truth of the matter in my wife's situation is no one had ever filed a petition for her before. So, all right, so select unknown, So you could select unknown if you're not sure, but just talk to your spouse, right? Get clear about that. Beneficiary's physical address. Now, what I like to do is have you guys living together, all right? So if you're married, if it's a marriage case, use your address as your address of record. And so if you're living together, let's see, if the beneficiary lives outside the United States in a home without a street number, leave these blank. But if they're in the United States, put their physical address. And so, what I would recommend doing is have this address match your address if you're living together, all right? So apartment 4C or whatever I had put. Be easier. Yeah, apartment 4C. There we go. Oakland, California, 94606. All right, other address and contact information. Provide the address in the United States where the beneficiary intends to live. All right? If different from items 11A through 11H, if the address is the same, type or print same in item number 12A. So right here, same. Got it? All right, provide the beneficiary's address outside the United States if it's different. If the address is the same, type same. So, yeah, there is no, maybe none. They don't have an address outside the United States. Or if they do have one, you could write that in, okay? So then mobile telephone number, email address, all right? How many times, and so write that in, all right? And then email address, whatever it is, right? Whatever. How many times has the beneficiary been married? So here the correct answer is 1. I'm her only marriage. If she had married, once prior to me, then that would be a total of 2. And so she could write, for example, 2 there and say current marital status is married. Date of current marriage was the same, whatever it is, July 11th, 2009, married to me. Place of current marriage, same as the one above. Some people get confused and thrown off by the asking of the same information in multiple parts of the forms different ways. The thing to remember is they're not trying to trick you. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make the form work whether or not you're doing it for a spouse or a parent or a child or a daughter. And so sometimes, if you're doing it for your daughter and your daughter's married, well, then you got to put the place of the daughter's marriage, right? And it wouldn't have been anywhere else on the form. And so, anyway, that's a nuance. Name of the beneficiary's spouses. Sorry, let me get this out of the way. My wife's spouse is me, right? So Landerholm, Otis, Carl, date marriage ended. It hasn't ended, so I'd leave that blank. And imagine she had a prior marriage to Smith, Fred, and imagine that marriage ended before her marriage to me. So it would have ended, I don't know, July 1st of the year 2001, for example. So then information about the beneficiary's spouse and children. So this is like person one is me again, right? Because the beneficiary's spouse, again, is me. Spouse and petitioner. Date of birth. This is my information again. Country of birth, USA. And then person two. So if there are children, then, we could include any children that we have. Child one. Okay. So then date of birth, whatever that date is, January 1st, 2021 or something, USA. And if there's a second child, you could put that person in there. Okay. And other children could go there too, right? So was the beneficiary ever in the United States? Yes. In this situation, she's here right now. Here she arrived as class of admission. So here, there's all kinds of possibilities. And what I'll look for is B1, B2, temporary visitor for pleasure. Because I'll just imagine, right? She came in on a tourist visa. And you got to request her I-94, right? So if you're not clear on how to do that, go online, type in I-94. Go to the official website of Customs and Border Patrol. Click already visiting the U.S. Get the most recent I-94. You're going to need to do this for your immigration case for other forms also. Put in her first name, last name, date of birth, month, day, month, year, document number, which is her passport number, and the country of issuance. And then hit next. And then you'll get her I-94. Well, then you can use that number right here, right? Whatever it is, date of arrival, whatever that date was, let's say January 5th of 2023. Authorized stay, let's say it expired already. Let's say it expired 6 months later, 7/5 of 2023. Look on your passport, look on the actual I-94 document. Passport number, look on your passport, whatever that number is, okay? Then on travel document number, this is a visa number, different from, I've explained this on other videos too, but visa, let me just look at a U.S. visa, images of a U.S. visa. Here we go. Let's see if you can see this here. No? Images. They won't like show me visa image. Why aren't they like zooming in for me the way Google usually does? Anyway, if you look on the visa, there's like a red number there. I don't know, you can't even see it. I'm sorry about that. No, I don't want a U.S., let's see, let's go U.S. travel visa image. There we go. There it shows up. Okay, here, it's this number right here in red, F00000826. All right. Now, that's a weird annotation. Don't worry too much about that. This is a fake, I think this is a fake, anybody named Happy Traveler from London is probably not quite their real name. Anyway, so, but this is the number to use in red there on that question of the form. Travel document number, country of issuance for passport or travel document number, so whatever country it was issued from, and the expiration date, okay? So employment information, where are they employed? Were they ever in immigration proceedings? Typically not. If they were in immigration proceedings, you got to fill in this other information, but you're also going to want to be careful, right? If they were in deportation proceedings or anything like that, then you are going to want the help of a lawyer helping you fill this out for sure, okay? So I'll put no for now. If the beneficiary's native written language does not use Roman letters, then put their first name, last name, middle name in their alphabet, right? So if this were Chinese, you could handwrite it, right? When you print out the form, you could handwrite that there. If you're filing for your spouse, provide the last address at which you physically lived together. So for me, this here would be our same mailing, same address, now entered 3 different times on this form. I think it was 3C is what I entered. Oakland, California, 94606. Date from, and this is like the date that you've lived together. So, whenever she entered the country, whatever I put there, January 1st, say, of 2023 to the present, and I would leave that blank. This question is a key question. The beneficiary is in the U.S. and will apply for adjustment of status to that of lawful permanent resident at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Office in. So for me, this depends on where you live, okay? So, when you do this, now you're saying, it's like time out, you're saying this is not going to be processed through a U.S. consulate overseas. This is going to be filed as an adjustment of status case. That's what this question is saying. So you got to be cautious of that. All right. And if you will not apply for adjustment of status, but you will apply for an immigrant visa at a U.S. embassy or consulate, this is where you might say Ciudad Juarez in Mexico or Lima, Peru, or whatever consulate that you're going to be applying for, London, England, right? So, but if you're doing this as an adjustment of status, make sure to fill these questions out and leave 62, fill 61 out and fill 62, or leave 62 blank. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Part 5 of the form, have you ever filed a petition for this beneficiary or any other person, any other alien? I would say no. If you have filed for other people in the past, that's potentially a red flag for immigration, but not necessarily. Right? Imagine I filed for my parents, and then I filed for my brother, and then now I'm filing for my wife. There's no red flag about that. But if you filed for spouse 1, spouse 2, spouse 3, then the government will say, wait a second, were these marriages legitimate? Right? And so that can be a red flag sometimes. Let's see here. If you answered yes, you got to provide information about it. So anyway, I've answered no there. If you are also submitting separate petitions for other relatives, provide names and your relationship to each. So I don't know, imagine I am filing at the same time for my wife who I've just married, and imagine my wife has a daughter who's now my stepchild, right? Now that's not the situation in my life, but imagine I were. Well, then, I might put in if I'm filing a petition for that person simultaneously also, then fill in that person's information, right? Or you might say none, okay? So, and you might say none here also. Then we're getting down to it. You check a box saying you can read English and you've read and understood every question in this form, or else you check this box saying that you had an interpreter read it all for you in the language that you speak, right? Or whatever, right? So I'm going to check saying that I read and understand English, and then I'm going to put my phone number and my mobile phone number, which I'm not going to put for these purposes. Anyway, email address, Landerholmimmigration.com. Petitioner's declaration, certification. Now I would print, sign there, date there. The I-130 is done. Except if I used an interpreter, have the interpreter fill their information, sign and date. And if I had a preparer, like if I was working with an attorney or everybody that works with our office, we would sign as the preparer and fill in this information, print, and then the attorney would sign and date. Okay? And then that's it for the I-130. If there is additional information, additional addresses for employment, additional addresses that you lived in, additional spouses, additional children, whatever it is, those things need to be added in this final page, Part 9 of the form. You can even add additional Part 9 pages. You could print out multiple versions of this page if you needed to, okay? To submit along with your case. So that's Form I-130. Sorry that took as long as it did to go through. I hope that was useful for you. Next, I want to look at, and I'll be much quicker, I promise, with the Form I-130A. All right. Here, this is really for the beneficiary or the spouse. All right. You still do G28. All right. You do a number, you fill out the spouse's name. So this is the beneficiary, the immigrant is going to fill this out. They've got their address history for the last 5 years, whether inside or outside the U.S. So hopefully this syncs up, right, with the information that you've put on the I-130. Physical address 1, 2, last physical address outside the United States. Now it asks for information about parents of the beneficiary, all of their information. Parent 2, all of their information. Then it asks about employment information for the beneficiary for the last 5 years. Okay, so whether inside of the U.S. or not. So current employment, previous employment, any employment outside the United States, spouse's statement, they can read English, or they're doing this with an interpreter, or they're doing it with a preparer. Typically you would check 1 and 2 there, and you would list the preparer, and they're going to be listed in Part 6, and it'll fill there once you fill it out in Part 6. So then the spouse's information, this is the spouse, this is the beneficiary. All right, so put their phone number, mobile, email address. They're going to sign, they're going to date. If there's an interpreter used, the interpreter will fill in this information and sign and date and say what language they're fluent in, Spanish, whatever. If the preparer if you've got an attorney working with it, same as always, the preparer will put that information in, say that they are an attorney, and put that their their legal relationship does extend. I don't know why it's not doing that on this form. Anyway, on Adobe it works fine. Only do that if you're working with an attorney. You might need to put the preparer's information here first. Maybe that's part of the issue. So now let's see if it added that to the form. No, it didn't. Okay, well, we would either handwrite that, or in Adobe it should work. I don't know why it's not doing that on Chrome here. Sometimes things like that happen. Anyway, if you're working with an attorney, they will fill out all the preparer's information. Print, sign, date, add additional information if there's additional addresses, work history, things of that nature. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That is how to fill out the Form I-130 and the Form I-130A. If you have any questions about how to do this in your situation, everybody's situation is different. We've got to bring fresh eyes to the I-130 and the I-130A every time. We got to know how to handle these types of situations and how immigration is looking for it in the forms, because you want to make sure you're being 100% honest, truthful, not misrepresenting anything in the form, even unintentionally, right? So, any error in how you fill out the form can cause delays and frustration and additional challenges in the processing of a case. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Otis Landerholm, Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.